A blind date? She's arriving in a wheelchair? Whispers rippled through the elegant restaurant. The door opened. A beautiful female CEO in a refined business dress rolled quietly to her reserved table. Some glances held cruel amusement. Others carried pity. She lifted her head, her calm eyes locking onto a man sitting in the corner, a single dad in a worn shirt. He stood up, pulled out a chair to make room for the wheelchair, said nothing extra. No one expected that this man would soon leave the entire dining room speechless and make the CEO cry in ways no one could imagine. Daniel Martinez, 38 years old, stood 6 feet tall with weathered good looks that spoke of years carrying responsibility alone. His calloused hands told stories of honest work, cleaning offices, maintaining equipment, doing whatever it took to provide for his daughter. His shirt was old but clean, pressed with the care of someone who understood that dignity comes from within, not from expensive clothes. His 9-year-old daughter, Nina, had developed a ritual that had become sacred in their household. Every evening before Daniel left for his night shift, she would carefully fold paper airplanes from notebook paper, pressing each crease with the precision of an engineer. She would slip them into his hands, her small fingers closing his around them, saying, "Take this home to me, Dad, okay? It's my promise that you'll come back." Their small apartment on the 3rd floor of a converted brownstone told the complete story of their life together. A scratched wooden table that Daniel had rescued from a dumpster and refinished by hand. An old radio that picked up classical music stations on clear nights, and a pot of climbing beans growing on their narrow fire escape balcony. Nina had planted the beans for a school science project, but they had become a symbol of hope, something beautiful growing despite limited space and resources. It was a tiny world measured in square feet rather than acres, but it overflowed with the kind of love that money couldn't buy. Daniel had sworn off dating completely after losing his wife Maria to cervical cancer 3 years earlier. The 18 months of treatments, hospital visits, and sleepless nights had drained their savings and left him emotionally exhausted. His only focus was Nina, getting her to school, helping with homework, making sure she felt secure despite having lost her mother at such a young age. His co-worker Janet, who had watched him work double shifts and refuse social invitations for months, had taken matters into her own hands. She secretly signed him up for a free blind dating app, using photos from the company picnic and writing a profile that emphasized his kindness and dedication to his daughter. When she finally confessed what she'd done and showed him the match notification, Daniel had tried to back out immediately. "Just one dinner," Janet had pleaded. "You can't spend the rest of your life alone." Maria wouldn't have wanted that for you. Claire Morrison, 32 years old, possessed the kind of striking beauty that belonged on magazine covers. Long brown hair that caught light like silk, intelligent eyes that could command a boardroom, and a presence that made people stop conversations when she entered a room. But for the past 4 years, since the accident that had damaged her spinal cord and left her legs partially paralyzed, she had moved through the world in a custom wheelchair that cost more than most people's cars. The media had dubbed her the Ice Queen after she had returned to work just 6 months after her accident, showing no public emotion and treating business competitors with the same ruthless efficiency that had made her successful before. What they didn't know was that the coldness was armor, protecting her from the pity and condescension that seemed to follow her everywhere. Her best friend and executive assistant, Rachel, had been pushing her to try dating for over a year. "You need someone to see you as Claire the woman, not Claire the CEO in a wheelchair," she had argued during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "You're isolating yourself from human connection, and that's not healing. That's just surviving." The 5-star restaurant sparkled with crystal chandeliers and candlelight that reflected off polished surfaces, creating an atmosphere of refined elegance that screamed expensive first dates and business dinners. When the hostess called out the reservation name, Daniel stood up from his corner table just as Claire rolled her wheelchair through the entrance, navigating between tables with practiced efficiency. Both froze in mutual recognition. They were each other's blind date. That night, Nina wrote in her school journal with her careful 9-year-old handwriting, "Today I folded a red paper airplane for Dad. I told him it was special because I want someone nice to fly with him. Someone who understands that paper airplanes are promises to come home safe, and that sometimes grown-ups need someone to remind them they deserve to be happy too. The morning after their dinner, Claire's world exploded into chaos. Internal company social media platforms buzzed with photographs taken by employees who had spotted her at the restaurant with Daniel. The images showed her laughing genuinely for the first time in months, and Daniel's paper airplane sitting on their table like evidence of some secret communication. Within hours, the photos had spread to gossip websites with headlines like "Ice Queen melts for maintenance man" and "CEO's charity date gone wrong." The board of directors called an emergency meeting before Claire had even finished her morning coffee. Grant Williams, the silver-haired vice president, who had been angling for her position since her accident, strutted into the conference room with barely contained glee. "Claire, we need to discuss your judgment," he announced, sliding a tablet across the mahogany table showing the viral photos. "Is this some kind of publicity stunt, or are we looking at a genuine lapse in professional decision-making?" Other board members shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs, unwilling to directly criticize Claire, but clearly concerned about the optics of their CEO dating someone they considered beneath her station. The unspoken questions hung in the air. How could she jeopardize the company's image? What would investors think? How could they trust her business judgment if her personal judgment was so questionable? The PR department, led by a nervous woman who had never faced a crisis quite like this, suggested an immediate damage control strategy. Claire should issue a public statement dismissing the date as a misunderstanding, perhaps frame it as charity work or community outreach gone wrong. Claire sat through the entire meeting in silence, her hands folded in her lap, watching through the glass conference room walls as Daniel moved through the hallway outside. He was bent over an industrial buffer, methodically cleaning the marble floors with the same careful attention he had shown when adjusting her wheelchair at dinner. Even from a distance, she could see the dignity in his posture, the way he took pride in work that others dismissed as menial. The contrast struck her powerfully. Inside the conference room, wealthy executives were treating her personal life like a stock portfolio to be managed and manipulated. Outside, a man who earned less in a month than they spent on lunch was living with integrity and purpose. That evening, Claire made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of sending flowers or calling to apologize for the media attention, she drove to Daniel's neighborhood in Queens. She told herself she was returning the lightweight jacket he had draped over her shoulders when they left the restaurant, but truthfully, she needed to see if their connection had been real or just her imagination. The apartment building was old but well-maintained, with window boxes full of late-season flowers, and the kind of neighborhood pride that came from people who cared about their community, even when they didn't have much money. Claire had to call Daniel from the lobby because there was no wheelchair-accessible entrance to the upper floors, a detail that highlighted the differences between their worlds more sharply than any income disparity could. When Daniel came down to meet her, he was followed by Nina, who bounded down the stairs with the boundless energy of childhood. The little girl's eyes went wide when she saw Claire's wheelchair, but not with pity or discomfort, with pure fascination. "Are you the lady who had dinner with my dad?" Nina asked, immediately kneeling beside the wheelchair to examine its mechanisms. "This is so cool. It's like a really advanced chair with all these gadgets." "Can you do wheelies?" Daniel gently corrected his daughter's enthusiastic questions, but Claire found herself laughing for the second time in days. Nina's unfiltered curiosity was refreshing after a day of carefully worded corporate concerns and media speculation. They invited Claire up to their apartment via the building's ancient elevator, and she found herself in a space that was smaller than her walk-in closet, but infinitely warmer than her penthouse. Nina's artwork covered the refrigerator like colorful flags of childhood creativity. The radio played soft jazz while Daniel prepared simple snacks, moving through the tiny kitchen with efficiency born of practice. "Do you have a runway yet?" Nina asked suddenly, looking up from the elaborate paper airplane she was folding at the kitchen table. Claire didn't understand the question at first, but Daniel explained gently, "Nina thinks everyone needs a safe place to land when they're tired of flying alone." The words hit Claire harder than she expected. In her world of corporate mergers, hostile takeovers, and strategic partnerships, there was no safe place to land. Every relationship was transactional, every conversation potentially recorded, every moment of vulnerability a potential weapon in someone else's hands. But sitting in this tiny apartment, watching Nina fold precise creases into notebook paper While Daniel prepared tea in mismatched mugs, Claire felt something she had almost forgotten: peace. Nina added a note to her collection of drawings that evening. Miss Claire came to visit today and helped me water the beans on the fire escape. She said my hands are steady like an engineer and that maybe I could design better wheelchairs when I grow up. Dad smiled the whole time she was here. Not his tired smile, but his real happy smile that makes his eyes crinkle up. I think he likes having someone to take care of, besides just me. The corporate announcement went out on Monday morning like a declaration of war. Claire Morrison's company would establish a $1.5 million access and inclusion initiative to retrofit all corporate facilities for better disability accessibility. The press release credited the idea to employee feedback and community input, but everyone in the building knew the real story behind the decision. The media narrative flipped overnight like a coin finding its other side. Instead of CEO caught slumming with janitor, headlines now read janitor's accessibility proposal wins corporate backing and single dad's idea transforms corporate culture. Business magazines that had been preparing exposés about Claire's judgment now scrambled to write features about innovative leadership and inclusive workplace design. But the transformation went far deeper than public relations victories. Claire had begun eating lunch in the company cafeteria once a week, not in the executive dining room with its white tablecloths and 7-course meals, but in the basement cafeteria where maintenance staff, security guards, and administrative assistants gathered around folding tables. She would roll her wheelchair up to their tables and listen, really listen, as they talked about rent increases, childcare challenges, and the daily struggles of making ends meet on hourly wages. Daniel had refused to accept any of the money personally, but he agreed to serve as a technical consultant on the accessibility project. His background in heavy machinery maintenance, which Claire had never known about, made him uniquely qualified to understand the engineering challenges of retrofitting old buildings for wheelchair access, improved lighting for people with visual impairments, and better signage for those with cognitive disabilities. The changes weren't cosmetic improvements designed to generate positive headlines. Claire implemented flex time scheduling specifically for single parents who needed to coordinate work with school pickup times. She expanded healthcare coverage to include mental health services, understanding that emotional wellness was just as important as physical health. She created clear pathways for advancement that didn't require college degrees, but emphasized skill development and on-the-job performance. Grant Williams watched these changes with growing alarm and hostility. As Claire's popularity with rank-and-file employees soared, his own influence within the company structure began to wane. He started spreading carefully worded rumors about Claire's judgment being compromised by her emotional attachment to someone he consistently referred to as the maintenance worker in board meetings. The confrontation that had been building for weeks finally erupted during a particularly tense quarterly review meeting. Grant stood up from his seat at the polished conference table, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard without question. "Claire, you're making decisions with your heart instead of your head," he declared, his words cutting through the air like accusations. "This company needs rational leadership based on proven business principles, not someone whose judgment is clouded by personal relationships with employees." Claire's response was measured but firm, her voice carrying the quiet strength that had helped her rebuild her life after her accident. "Grant, this company needs leadership that remembers we're in business to serve people, not just maximize quarterly profit margins. If treating employees with dignity and creating inclusive workplaces is emotional decision-making, then I'm proud to lead with emotion as well as logic." The room erupted in heated discussion as board members chose sides. Some supported Grant's traditional approach to corporate governance, arguing that personal relationships between executives and employees created inherent conflicts of interest. Others had seen the positive results of Claire's initiatives: improved employee retention, increased productivity, and enhanced company reputation that was attracting top talent and socially conscious investors. The confrontation reached its climax when Grant attempted to call for a vote of no confidence in Claire's leadership. He had spent weeks building support among board members who were concerned about the company's changing direction and the media attention surrounding Claire's personal life. But Grant had underestimated the impact of Daniel's accessibility initiative and Claire's grassroots leadership style. Employee satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs in company history. Customer loyalty surveys showed increased trust and brand affection. Stock prices had risen steadily as ethical investing funds added the company to their portfolios. Nina and Claire began spending more time together during this period, creating an unlikely but beautiful friendship that bridged generations and circumstances. The 9-year-old would teach Claire how to fold increasingly complex paper airplane designs, some that looped through the air, others that glided for impressive distances, and special ones that could carry tiny messages written on strips of paper. In return, Claire helped Nina with advanced math homework that was challenging even Daniel's engineering background, and they worked together on science projects that combined Nina's creativity with Claire's business strategic thinking. Nina's teacher commented that the girl had gained remarkable confidence in class, raising her hand to answer questions and volunteering for presentations with the poise of someone who felt genuinely supported at home. Daniel watched these interactions with quiet satisfaction and growing love for both the woman who was becoming part of their small family and the daughter who was flourishing under additional adult attention and guidance. Claire discovered the profound joy of nurturing a child, something she had never experienced and had assumed was permanently closed off to her after her accident. The turning point in the corporate battle came when a 30-second security camera video went viral across social media platforms. The footage showed Claire and Daniel working together to test a newly installed accessibility ramp, with Claire pushing her wheelchair down the incline, while Daniel used a measuring tape to check angles and safety features. Their collaboration was professional but warm, showing mutual respect and shared commitment to creating something meaningful. The video spread with the hashtag #AccessForAll, generating millions of views and thousands of positive comments about corporate responsibility, inclusive design, and the power of listening to employees regardless of their job titles. News outlets picked up the story as an example of innovative leadership, and business schools began requesting case study materials about Claire's management transformation. Grant made one final, desperate attempt to undermine Claire by leaking details about her personal relationship with Daniel to a gossip magazine, hoping to create a scandal that would force the board's hand. But the strategy backfired spectacularly when the resulting article portrayed their relationship as an inspiring love story between two people who had found each other despite societal expectations and economic differences. The board meeting where Grant was formally censured and asked to resign was attended by over 50 employees who had taken time off work to support Claire. Their presence sent an unmistakable message about loyalty and trust that no amount of corporate maneuvering could overcome. 6 months after the Accessibility Initiative launched, the transformation was visible throughout every corner of the corporate campus. 35 physical improvements had been completed, from wheelchair-accessible bathroom stalls to better lighting in parking garages for people with visual impairments. But the changes went far beyond architecture and engineering. Daniel had been offered a permanent contract as Director of Facilities and Employee Experience, a position that came with regular hours, comprehensive health insurance, and a salary that allowed him to move Nina to a better school district while still maintaining the modest lifestyle that kept them grounded. More importantly, the job allowed him to be home for dinner every night, continuing their sacred ritual of sharing the day's experiences around their scratched wooden table. Claire was no longer known throughout the company as the Ice Queen. Employees at every level referred to her simply as Claire, someone who remembered their names, asked about their children, and genuinely cared about their professional development and personal well-being. The executive dining room remained empty most days as Claire chose to eat lunch in the main cafeteria, where conversations ranged from weekend soccer games to career advancement strategies. The relationship between Claire and Daniel deepened gradually through shared experiences rather than dramatic romantic gestures. They discovered they both enjoyed quiet evenings spent reading while Nina worked on homework, simple meals prepared together in the tiny kitchen that somehow tasted better than expensive restaurant food, and long conversations about everything from Nina's latest school project to Claire's strategies for creating more equitable workplace policies. Claire began spending most weekends at Daniel's apartment, initially sleeping on the pull-out couch, but eventually sharing Daniel's modest bedroom as their relationship evolved from friendship to love. She learned to cook basic meals that could be prepared in the narrow kitchen, discovered the satisfaction of helping Nina with increasingly complex math problems, and found peace in the domestic rhythms that had been completely absent from her previous life of corporate dinners and strategic networking events. Daniel made subtle modifications to Claire's penthouse to make it more comfortable and accessible when she occasionally stayed there. But she found herself preferring the cozy atmosphere of his apartment to the cold elegance of her expensive home. The penthouse, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and designer furniture, felt like a museum of her former life, beautiful but lifeless. Nina became the unconscious architect of their family unit, naturally creating traditions that included all three of them. She would set 3 places at the dinner table without being asked, assign household chores to both adults as if they were a natural team, and make weekend plans that assumed Claire's participation. Her easy acceptance of Claire as a permanent fixture in their lives helped both adults relax into the relationship without overthinking its implications. The company's accessibility initiative expanded far beyond physical modifications to include comprehensive changes in hiring practices, employee support systems, and corporate culture. Claire worked with disability rights organizations to develop recruitment programs that actively sought qualified candidates with disabilities, created mentorship opportunities for employees from disadvantaged backgrounds, and established partnerships with community organizations that supported inclusive workplace development. Claire discovered that leading with empathy and genuine care for employee well-being created measurably better business results. Employee retention rates improved dramatically as people felt valued and supported. Productivity increased when workers weren't constantly worried about job security or struggling with work-life balance. The company attracted top talent who specifically wanted to work for an organization known for treating people with dignity and respect. One Saturday morning in early spring, Claire sat at Daniel's scratch wooden table with sunlight streaming through windows that Nina had decorated with her latest art projects. The 9-year-old was carefully arranging a tablecloth while humming a song she had learned at school. Claire reached into her purse and placed a simple key on the table. "If you both still need me here," she said quietly, her voice carrying the vulnerability of someone offering their whole heart, "I'd like to stay permanently, not as a guest anymore." Daniel looked at the key, then at the wheelchair handles he had carefully wrapped with soft padding to prevent Claire's hands from getting sore during long days. He understood exactly what she was asking, not just to move in, but to build a real family together. He nodded with the quiet certainty that had first attracted her to him. "Welcome home." Nina stopped arranging the tablecloth and ran around the small kitchen with pure joy, sticking a small paper flag she had made into the pot of climbing beans that now grew tall enough to require the support system Daniel had built. "This is our runway. Now everyone can land safely." The red paper airplane from their first date still sat on the windowsill, no longer flying away, but serving as a reminder of the moment when everything had changed for all of them. Comment runway if you believe that love creates safe places for people to land when they're ready to stop flying alone. 2 years after the Access and Inclusion Initiative launched, Claire's company had become a model studied by business schools across the country and replicated by corporations around the world. The program had grown from Daniel's initial $1.5 million proposal into a comprehensive approach to workplace equality that had transformed not just physical spaces, but entire organizational cultures. Claire was invited to speak at conferences about inclusive leadership and disability rights, but she consistently declined high-profile appearances, preferring to let the program's results speak for themselves. She had learned that real change happened through consistent daily actions rather than inspirational speeches or media coverage. Daniel's role as Director of Facilities and Employee Experience had evolved into something more comprehensive than either of them had initially envisioned. He now oversaw programs that made the workplace better for everyone, regardless of their physical abilities, family situations, or economic backgrounds. His department had become the heart of the company's commitment to treating all employees with dignity and respect. Nina flourished in their blended family structure, excelling academically while developing the kind of confidence that comes from being genuinely loved and supported by 2 adults who prioritized her well-being above everything else. At 11 years old, she had already decided she wanted to become an engineer who designed better accessibility equipment, inspired by watching Claire navigate the world and Daniel solve practical problems with creative solutions. Claire's relationship with her board of directors had transformed completely from the adversarial dynamic that had characterized her early years as CEO. They had learned that treating employees well wasn't just morally correct, but financially smart. The company's stock price had reached record highs as their reputation for ethical leadership attracted investors who valued sustainable business practices over short-term profit maximization. But the real measure of success wasn't found in quarterly reports, media coverage, or industry awards. It lived in the small daily moments that had become the foundation of their family life. Nina's laughter echoing through the apartment while she helped prepare dinner, Daniel's quiet satisfaction as he completed projects that made life better for people with disabilities, Claire's growing comfort with being seen as a complete person rather than just a successful CEO who happened to use a wheelchair. One evening, as autumn painted the city in shades of gold and red, they sat around their dinner table sharing stories from their day. Claire realized she had found something she hadn't even known she was searching for. A family that had chosen her not despite her wheelchair or because of her wealth, but because of who she was as a human being, capable of love, growth, and genuine connection. Daniel's paper airplane ritual with Nina had evolved naturally to include Claire. Each evening, Nina would fold 3 planes from different colored paper, one for each member of their family, representing their daily promise to come home to each other no matter what challenges they faced in the outside world. The accessibility improvements Daniel had initiated had spread far beyond their original corporate campus. Other companies had implemented similar programs after seeing the positive results. Architecture schools had begun teaching universal design principles as standard curriculum. City planners were incorporating accessibility features into new public spaces. The ripple effects of one man's refusal to be bought off had continued expanding in ways none of them could have predicted. Claire kept the first paper airplane Daniel had given her in her office desk drawer, a tangible reminder that sometimes the most important journeys begin when someone offers you a safe place to land after flying alone for too long. Nina's climbing beans had grown tall and strong, requiring the 3-post support system that Daniel had built from recycled materials. She would explain to anyone who visited their apartment, plants grow stronger when they have more than one place to lean on, just like families. Years later, when business magazines asked Claire about the secret to her leadership success, she would point to a framed photograph on her desk. 3 people sitting around a simple wooden table with paper airplanes scattered across the surface, like promises of homecoming and belonging. The most successful CEO in her industry had learned that true power came not from commanding from above, but from creating conditions where everyone, employees, family members, and community partners, could thrive and reach their full potential. Family isn't determined by where you're born or what circumstances bring you together. It's created by the daily choice to stay, to support each other, and to build something beautiful together. Love isn't dramatic or loud. It's the quiet runway that helps people land safely when they're ready to stop flying alone. If this story touched your heart, comment "Runway" and don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Heart Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten, created by real people every day.